everyone, happy to have you here with me once again. Welcome back. As you can see in the title, finally we're going to be having the video that I've been promising since October of last year, something like that. My plan was for you to see it at the end of January, but now, no, not the end of January. You're going to see it at the end of January, but my plan was for you to see it at the end of December of 2021, but better later than ever is something like that what you said. I don't know, but yeah, I don't want to make this introduction too long because it's going to be a long video. As you can see in the title, we're going to be separating this video in two parts because I have 43 eyeshadow palettes, I think. So in this first video, we're going to be talking about the lower 23, and then in the second part, we're going to be sharing the top 20 eyeshadow palettes in my collection. Did I set what this video is about at all? Well, probably as you can see in the title and you might guess, today we're going to be ranking all of the palettes in my collection, and yeah, as I said, I have 43. So this was a mission. It was really a challenge for me to rank these palettes, and I decided to go with something that Sarah Rose did last year. I think like in July she ranked all of her collection, and since for me it's impossible to rank 43 palettes, like I can know which is my favorite palette and which one is my least favorite palette of my collection, but decide between, for example, the place 43 or 23 and 24, it will have been completely impossible. For that reason, I decided to go with kind of a point system where I rank 4 aspects of my palettes in a scale from 1 to 5. The like categories or like the different points that I was ranking was color story, formula, inspiration, and packaging. Then I sum up all of those 4 numbers, and that way it was way easier for me to get a ranking. But yeah, I don't want to make this introduction any longer because I need to start working in half an hour, so at least that way I'm going to be forced to do this video a little bit quicker. But yeah, let's start with the place number 43. If there is some changes in the lighting, I'm sorry, it's cloudy today, so there's nothing I can do about it. But starting with place 43, I have to admit that I'm not surprised that this is my lowest rated palette in my collection for me, and that is my new England palette from CIATE. This palette I got in BoxyCharm, and it was like a gift for subscribing for the first time, and I don't know why when I first saw it I was so, I don't know, inspired by this color story, but now that I have it I feel like it's a mess. I feel like it has some pretty shades. For example, my favorite is this one over here, but as a color story as a whole is not that good. Sadly, I feel like there is no cohesion in this palette and I don't know what to do with it. Also, it has more shimmers than matte, and I feel like this palette it's completely lacking matte. And also, finally, the formula of this palette is just weird. We have like 3 different formulas only in shimmers. Like some of them are more creamy, some of them are more stiff, more buttery, more intense. Some others are kind of just meh. So yeah, as a whole, I don't really like this palette. I'm not considering to declutter it, but yeah, it's not a lot for me. Okay, moving on, we have my place number 42. And again, I have to say that I'm not surprised which is my palette number 42, and that is my Sweetest palette by Beauty Creations. This was a gift from my sister in 2019, and until the end of last year, I didn't use it. Basically because the color story is just meh. It's a very neutral it's a very neutral palette, but I don't know why it just doesn't call me. Maybe it's for the fact that I have a lot of neutral palettes in my collection, but it's just me. This palette also got a little like low points in formula because the teamers are so lackluster. I'm not expecting something super glittery or super texture, but these like teamers are more like a satin than a metallic, and I don't love that. Moving on, we have my palette 41. Again, not surprised, but there is nothing wrong with this palette. It's just not my kind of colors, despite the fact that I'm using all of those colors today. And that is my Just My Luck palette from Colourpop. And I have to say, green is not my favorite color to wear. As you can see today, today is not the day for me to say this because I'm actually using this palette right now. I have it in my Pandu's eyeshadows, and let me tell you, the formula, it's okay, are not the best greens that I have in my collection, but my biggest issue with this palette is just the color story and the color in general. I don't love greens. Greens is my least favorite color to wear. I use it more often than blue, but blue I like more. It's just that I don't feel too comfortable. I just don't like greens. I prefer something a little bit more minty, and this palette only has one mint color. So yeah, it's a May palette for me. I like to have it on my collection because I know that those little times that I want a green look, I know that I can reach for this palette. It's almost the color of my sweater, but yeah, not a lot for me. The next palette in number 40 makes me sad because this was a gift from my boyfriend, and I don't love this palette. It's in the place number 40, as I said, and it's the Rude Awakening palette from Rude Cosmetics. And let me tell you, I think starting with this palette, there is completely nothing wrong with the palette. It's just a matter of taste. And this is a huge palette and has kind of repetitive colors on it. But I think my bigger issue with this palette is the formula, sadly. The reason for that is because the mattes especially are kind of lacking pigment. I feel like with if I use like the lighter shades, I don't have any issues with it, but if I use the darker ones, I feel like they fade in, like you blend them away basically. So yeah, this is not my favorite palette on my collection, and as I said, that makes me sad. But yeah, I don't want to fool you, I want to be honest, and this is not one of my favorite palettes. I should move to the side a little bit so I can leave the points over here. Sorry I didn't did that earlier. First time that I'm filming this video, so yeah, we're kind of experimenting. But okay, let's move on with the number 39. And this one, I'm surprised is higher than the Rude Awakening. Because if I said that greens are my least favorite color to wear, maybe I was lying because it's kind of a match. Do you say that? A match like equal to reds. And I'm going to be talking about my main squeeze palette. Again, from Colourpop, one of their monochromatics palettes. And I was so like, I can I wasn't able to wait when I ordered this palette because I was really excited because I thought that I like red shades, but I don't, to be honest. But yeah, this is, as I said, another monochromatic palette, a pretty red palette, and there is some colors that you might think that are not so vibrant red, for example this one over here, but in the eyes, I don't know, I feel like in the pan looks more like a watermelon color, but in the eyes it's just a red. And I don't love reds. Also, I should mention that with all of my Colourpop palettes, like the 9 pan palettes that has the plastic packaging, they didn't receive a really good like score in packaging because first, I don't like it, the print fades away, and also if you drop this palette, all the shades fly all over your floor, so that's not something that I love. So yeah, I thought that I should mention that. And with the palette number 38, I was so disappointed because I really wanted to love this palette, but I just don't love it. And that is my AYANA palette by Natasha. I was so excited with the idea of the formula of Natasha, and maybe this is not the best example of Natasha formula, but I was just meh. I have heard so many people talking about the shimmers from Natasha, so I was really excited about trying these two shades over here, but I wasn't impressed. I feel like maybe my expectations were way too high, but I feel like, for example, comparing these palettes to that taupe from Colourpop, I don't feel like this is better. Also, I feel like the color story in this palette, even if it looks pretty, is not for me. This shade is too light to be a crease shade for me. This, even if it looks like quite a good color for me, it's way too dark. So yeah, as a whole, I wasn't impressed, but I'm looking forward to try more from Natasha, especially her midi palettes. That's something that I would like to try in 2022, and hopefully I like that better. The next palette is another one that I thought so much about this purchase. It wasn't like an impulse purchase at all. And I don't know why I thought I was really going to like it. Maybe the reason for that is because I saw someone saying that this will be a good dupe for the Untamed palette from Sigma. And I think that's the reason why I purchased it, and I was so excited about it. But yeah, in place number 37, the palette is Smithens in Switzerland from BH Cosmetics. I don't know, I feel like the idea of this palette, it's pretty, but it's so hard for me to get a look with it. I don't know, first I feel like we have some pretty nice cool tone shades, but it's really hard for me to make a cool tone look only using this palette. And usually I don't mind reaching for other palettes to complete a look, but I feel like I'm missing some transition shades and crease shades here. The metallics are really nice, I like them, I don't love them, but they're okay. And finally, I don't like the fact that we have 3 really light shades. Okay, moving on, we have the place number 36, and there I have my Orange Glad palette. And this is just another palette that could be higher, but oranges are not my color anymore. I feel like I got pretty burnt out of oranges back in 2020, and until this point, I have not recovered out of that, and I still don't enjoy oranges that much. But out of that, this is a really nice palette. I really like the formula of it. But also, starting with this palette, we have an issue, and that is pressed glitters, especially Colourpop pressed glitters. I feel like they're too chunky, and even if I have used, for example, this glitter on my eyes once, I wouldn't do it again, because if one of those particles get into my eyes, that will be really, really bad. So yeah, this is a nice color story. I like it. My issue with it is it's orange. It's a nice orange palette, but it's orange, and I don't love oranges. In the place number 35, we have a palette that I feel like it's growing on me, and that is my Fantastique palette from Rude Cosmetics. This palette, I have it right now in my Pandus eyeshadows, and I feel like the more I use it, the more I like it. It's a pretty colorful palette of my collection, and I feel like you have your neutrals and your colorfuls, but again, the same issue. I feel like I'm missing transition and crease shades. The shimmers, most of them are pretty nice. I don't like too much this one over here. There are some that are kind of lackluster, difficult to word, kind of patchy, but I will say my bigger issue with this palette is that some of the darker shades, when you apply them on the eyes, are not as dark. And also, this palette lost a lot of points for the packaging, because I feel like this packaging, it's really ugly. Maybe you like it, that's okay, but I just really don't like it. A palette that I thought it was going to be way lower, but surprise, surprise, is in number 34. Is my United Shades of Glitter from Rude Cosmetics again. And I thought it was going to be lower because this is basically a glitter palette. It's full of glitter. It's 21 shades of glitter. And yeah, I just said that I don't like glitters. So why this palette is so high? I don't even use it on my eyes. I mostly use it on my nails. But some way with the point system, it ended up in the place number 34. I think the thing with this palette is that I feel like it has a pretty unique color story for glitters. Most of the glitters that I look for on my collection are here. So those little times that I want a glitter, I know that I can find it here. But yeah, in formula, I only give it a 1.5 because I feel like these are good glitters, but are glitters, so I don't like it. In number 33, we have this palette over here. This is my Soft X Extra Spice palette. And for a really long time, I really liked this palette because it had, in the past, colors that I didn't have on my collection. The thing is, the color story, it's pretty, but not really cohesive. I guess you can see it like 2 9 pans. This one over here that are more earthy tones, and this one over here that is more like fire, to say it in a way. The colors work well, but the shimmers are not really good. Like, it's really hard for me to work with them, are lackluster, and I was expecting something else from this palette. There was a while where I really enjoyed this palette. Now, not so much. I don't know if it's because this palette is starting to get old, but right now I cannot rank it any higher. In the place number 32, we have another palette that I would love this palette to be higher because it was a gift from my boyfriend again, and it's my Love Group palette from Rude Cosmetics. And let me start with the packaging. I don't like the shape. I don't like the cover. The colors are nice. The colors are nice. This is definitely a companion palette. You cannot create too many complete looks only with this palette, but I feel like you have a nice variety. Especially I like the shimmers in this palette. You need to use a glitter glue with it. That way they will look prettier, they will last longer, and you will not have as much fallout. But I think my biggest issue with this palette are these two shades over here. First, I don't really like this shade. It's kind of an ugly shade for me. I have had it in other palettes and I just don't like it. And this purple over here, it's really pretty but really hard to work with. So yeah, for that reason, this palette is not any higher. Okay, in number 31, we have my ZODIACLOVE palette. And this palette, I bought it only because it was on sale and I was already purchasing the Zodiac, like the original, the volume 1. And this palette, first let's talk about this unnecessary huge packaging that it has. This palette really needed to be this huge. Let me answer for you, no. The color story of it, it's pretty, but I don't really feel inspired by it. And I think one of my bigger issues with it is that I feel like most of the shimmers are lacking like a base color. They're pretty sheer and I don't know, I was expecting something else. The Zodiac Original is one of my favorite palettes on my collection, and you're going to be seeing it in the top 20 that I'm not going to be sharing today. But this one, I don't know, I feel like I was expecting more. And finally, in number 30, we have a palette that I really like, but I don't use. I feel like starting from now, all of the palettes I really enjoy. It's just not a favorite, and I have a lot of palettes. But yeah, we have my Baby Got Peach. And again, this is a palette that lost a whole point because of the glitters. because yeah, this is a pretty palette for summer, for spring. I really enjoy to use it on those times, but has this glitter over here that, to be honest, I really enjoy using on my nails. But again, a super chunky glitter that I don't feel comfortable wearing on my eyes. Also, as I have already said, oranges are not my colors. This one that are more peachy, I like more than bright oranges, but also I feel like this palette is a little bit too monochromatic, and for that reason it's not any higher. In number 29, I have my Seduce palette from W7, and let me tell you, this is the only W7 palette that have survived in my collection. At some point I had like 5 W7 or even more in my collection, and now this is the only one that is left because I declutter all of the rest. This is a dupe from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette, so the color story is really pretty. My only issue with it is this color over here. I just don't understand that color in this palette. So yeah, the shimmers are really pretty. I like the mattes, I like the packaging. I don't know what to say about it. In number 28, I'm surprised that this palette is not higher. This is my Aha Honey from Colourpop, and this is a yellow golden palette, and I really enjoy those colors. I think the issue with this palette and why it's not even higher, first is the packaging. As I said, I have dropped this palette and a shade completely shattered and it was a mess. It's the shade over here, and until now I still find golden pigment all over my palettes because it was a huge mess. So yeah, the packaging is not something that I love, and I think you can see it has a glitter, so with that it lost a whole point. But I didn't know that I like yellow tones on my eyes until I start using this palette. And to be honest, I really love the looks that I have created with this palette. I feel like it has some really pretty and special shades. For example, this one I will say it's one of my favorites. But yeah, I think because of the packaging and the glitter, this palette is not higher. Okay, I need to hurry because I need to start working like right now. In number 27, we have my MENAGE MUAH palette from Colourpop, and I was so excited about this palette because this kind of colors is just something that I really love. The thing with it, first, it has 2 glitters, not even one. So that is not something that I really like, but I will say my biggest issue with it is the shimmers are pretty lackluster, and you really need to use a wet brush to make them shine, and even that way they're not impressive at all. I was hoping for something else, but I really like the mattes in this palette. These are really my kind of tones, especially for winter and autumn. These kind of colors I really enjoy, and also I love the fact that this palette goes from pretty light to pretty dark without going to like the white cream shade to the black. So yeah, that adds points. In number 26, we have my Magic Mini palette from Julia's Place. This is a nice palette, especially for the shimmers I really like. I feel like it has some pretty special shades, and one of my favorite colors are in this palette. For example, this one over here was a complete surprise for me. I wasn't expected to love it as much as I do. My issue with it, first, is the whole color story. To be honest, the fact that it's half cool tone, half warm tones, I don't really love. Most of the time that I use this palette, I feel like I don't know what to do with it. Also, I feel like in the cool tone side, I'm really missing some shades like transitions, crease colors. It doesn't work for me. I feel like I'm losing my voice. Oh my god, and I still need to talk about 5 palettes in like a minute. So moving on, we have my Alicia palette, and this was the first colorful palette that I have on my collection. And when I got it, I was so inspired and I made so many fun looks with it. This is a rainbow palette, and let me tell you, the formula is not the best, but for so long it was my only colorful palette. This is a thing that made me play with color, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. I had so much fun doing the most colorful eye looks that I have ever made. So even if the formula is not that good, I really like it. One issue with it is first the formula, as I said, and also the fact that this looks like kids makeup, if that makes sense. With number 24, I'm surprised, but I'm not. This is so high because it's a color that I almost don't use, and those are blues. And I have my blue palette over here. This is such, well, can you see it? Gold pigment again. But yeah, blues are my favorite colors, like in general, in life. Not in eyeshadows, but every time that I look at this palette, it's amazing. Again, the packaging, it's really bad. I have dropped it and the shades have flown all over my floor, and all the time the shades are close to fall off from the palettes. But as I said, this is a really nice blue palette. The few times that I feel like using a blue look, I know that this palette will have everything I need, and the performance is so perfect for a blue palette. These are definitely my best blues on my collection, and every time that I look at it, I feel so inspired by it. I just don't use it. In number 23, we have my Lilith palette from Glam Factor. This is a dupe from the Nude Light palette, and I was so inspired by this color story. The issue with it, again, are the shimmers. They look so pretty, and when you swatch them, they are magical. But once you apply them, it's so hard to work with them. Also, the darker shades in the palettes are really like soft. They don't look in your eyes like they look in the pans. But this is a nice palette. Even if now I have my Nude Light palette, it's not going to be in this ranking because it's pretty new. But even if I have the original one now, I don't feel like giving away this palette because it's a palette that I really enjoy. I should start working right now, but we only have 2 more palettes to talk about. So let's start with the Pt.1. I never know how to say this name. This one is in place number 22, and I'm not surprised. Again, it has a glitter, so it's missing points because of that. But I don't know. This is the sister from the MENAGE MUAH palette, and I think I was more like looking forward to this palette, but this palette really surprised me. These are the kinds of greens that I like to use. The shimmers are just amazing. I don't have any issue with them. The mattes are blendable, pretty. The color story is amazing, and again, goes from really light to really dark. And yeah, in general, this is an amazing palette. I wish the packaging would have been prettier. This is not something that I love, but it's a nice palette. And in number 21, the last palette that we're going to be talking today, and I feel like I cannot talk anymore. So sorry if my voice has been going lower and lower. It's my Going Coconuts palette. This is such a stunning palette, and I will say it's my favorite neutral palette because it's not too cool, it's not too warm, it's just a neutral palette, and I love it. I feel like some shades are repetitive, and for that reason it misses some points, but the shimmers, especially in this palette, I just love them. This is a palette that I will use forever and ever and ever. It's a beautiful palette that I really enjoy using in summer. Even if I haven't used it yet, I need to use it. But same with the packaging. This palette loses points because it's a plastic packaging from Colourpop, but also this palette has never closed. Like, nope, it doesn't close. So for that reason, it loses another point. But yeah, I really like this palette, and I'm not surprised. I'm surprised it's not even higher, but I guess I just have better palettes on my collection. But yeah, that's everything for today. I cannot speak anymore. I need to go to work, and As I said at the introduction, we're going to be having part 2 pretty soon. That will be my next video, and there we will be talking about my top 20 palettes. Let me know if any of these palettes that I have already mentioned are one of your favorites, and let me know which is your least favorite palette in your whole collection. But yeah, that's everything for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please consider subscribing, especially if you want to see the top 20 palettes. But yeah, I need to go to work, so I'll see you in the next one. Bye.